Thanks so much for joining us for Conversations on Showing Up for Kids. Today is June the 3rd. I'm Tim Markle. I'm the director of the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Health Care Needs. And today we're going to be talking about special education and IEPs and who can help. Before we get to talking to our guests today, I do want to remind everybody that please mute your phones. The camera will go to wherever the sound is. And so you want to be muted during the first part of the conversation, and then we'll open up the phones for the second part where we're hoping that you will join in the discussion. Remember that we are being recorded, and so anything that you say will be recorded for all posterity. So please do not use any personal identifiable health information, anything that you do not want anybody else to know across the internet. And also, we are not offering any legal advice. We are not offering any medical advice. We are holding a conversation so that we can maybe help people out. So please do not take anything that we say as legal advice. That being said, glad you could join us. And I am very excited to welcome Matthew Zellmer today. Matthew is the Parent Service Coordinator for Wisconsin Facets, which the first order of business, because I forgot to write it down, will be to see if Matthew knows what Wisconsin Facets stands for. So we'll get the acronyms out of the way. If you hear me say CYSHCN ever, that is Children and Youth with Special Health Care Needs. So Matthew, thank you so much for being here. And so what does FACETS stand for, and what do you guys do?
So first of all, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. FACETS stands for the Wisconsin Family Education Center. See, I screwed it up.
It happens.
Family Assistance Center for Education, Training, and Support. Our logo for many years was a diamond in keeping with FACETS. And originally, I guess we were supposed to be, we were going to be birthed as Wisconsin Faces, but at the time another nonprofit already had that name apparently. So we added the training component, which is now very much one of our core services, and we became Wisconsin Facets, so Family Assistance Center for Education, Training, and Support.
That's a lot of words. Can you tell me briefly what all FACETS is involved in?
So I sometimes put it, Tim, as Wisconsin Facets is the IEP process people. Sometimes it's easier to attack this question by briefly naming things we don't do. You covered one of them in the open, which is we cannot provide legal advice. I'm not an attorney, nor do I play one on the telephone or Zoom. If I were an attorney, we still would not be able to provide legal advice, and we have certain situations where we have recommended to families that they, for further assistance, to seek that type of advice. So we don't provide legal advice. We are not case management in the sense of like a social worker that opens a case, perhaps has a time frame that they can spend with a family, and then the case closes. And we are also, and this is very important, we are not decision makers in any meeting, in any process that we're engaged in with a parent or a family member, because we have a number of core values, but I think perhaps the most important one day to day is that we believe in parent empowerment. So what that means is we are an organization that people call for assistance and support, anything related to their child's IEP, the special education process, evaluations, meeting preparation, assistance in meetings, dispute resolution options, things of that sort. Serving statewide, we know full well that very likely the needs of someone in Kenosha are not those as a student in Superior. So the main role that I have is as the lead help desk specialist at FACETS, which means I am often the first person that people are connected with when they call with special education related questions. And I always say it's not dull because, in effect, you have to be ready to answer any question within the realm of special education, and even sometimes initially those outside the realm, because it's not
Yep.
a parent's fault if they call for help and aren't aware exactly what we do. So that's another reason why it's good that you reached out and we're doing this today. But it's not dull, and we serve all 72 counties, officially ages 0 to 26, but the school piece, of course, kids with significant disabilities exit out at age 21. If a parent is to call about their kid, or the youth self-advocate calls, from 21 to 26, or if they happen to be 30, it's not as if we won't talk to them. It just typically takes the form of listening to their needs and then referring to another agency, perhaps, like if it's a healthcare need, maybe you guys at the regional center, the appropriate regional center. If it's employment, probably DVR, maybe an independent living center where they live, things of that nature. So we don't refuse to talk with anyone. It's just that what we do is primarily concerning the special education process.
Which the special education process for any family who has a child with disability is such a huge part of their life. I mean, it can dominate from if someone is in birth to 3 and then into early childhood and they get an IEP in school. I mean, it could be a really major part of a child's life growing up, is dealing with and being a part of the special education system. Unfortunately, that system isn't always the easiest to understand. Like a lot of systems that are out there, is they're set up and they're designed to do something, but when you first enter into it, you don't really understand what's going on. And then this year, with the way COVID has happened, it's thrown everything into sort of a different realm, that no one really knows how the system is supposed to react or is supposed to do. So since we've been in COVID, have you been getting any sort of different calls? What are people calling facets about? Where are parents struggling these days?
Well, this is not exactly the best promotional comment, but I'll be honest, our call volume has dropped
Mm-hmm.
simply because the suddenness, I feel, of the new reality that all families are facing, and especially those of kids with disabilities. Our call volume has dropped, and my hypothesis has been that it's day to day just figuring out life, your job, and then in many cases having to become the educator for your child.
Yes.
Those are very difficult roles to balance in a non-pandemic environment, let alone what we have now. So the calls are down, and what we have had is not, we have not necessarily had a high volume of virus related situations that have been the topic of conversation. It's typically been, sort of the core areas of parents feeling that the IEP is not being implemented properly, questions about evaluations, behavior things, and the dispute
Yeah.
resolution systems in Wisconsin are still operating by mutual agreement. So we have had a number of those. So I think the bulk of the COVID related talks that we will have is probably going to be coming in the near future
Mm,
as we, hear from the state and from districts about what their reopening plans are going to be. And then we know that there's going to be a massive responsibility on the part of schools to provide what in a way we can call compensatory services. DPI is kind of using the umbrella term additional services at this point. But I fully expect that at Facets, we will be very busy on the phones. I should mention that we have continued during this time of lower call volume. We've continued with all of our webinars, as you know, and I want your audience to know that all of our
mm-hmm.
services are free, and you can access those, some of them archived on wifacets.org. And we have also on our website and Facebook page, we have created quite the vast resource library gleaned from numerous places, COVID things, guidance from DPI and the Federal Department of Ed regarding how special ed may have changed or be changing, and lots of learn at home and teach at home resources from a number of good places such as PBS Wisconsin, just to name one. And I know you've unearthed in your daily work, Tim, much of that yourself. So we join you in that effort, and we do want families to know that we are still here, our services are free, and we're still here to assist you on your journey.
So let's say that parent calls and said, not even thinking COVID, but just thinking school year. And they call and say, I don't think they're following, I don't think they're following the IEP. As I was in the IEP meeting and I thought this was what they're going to do, but they don't seem to be doing it. What are you going to be able to say to that parent? How's Facets going to be able to help them out?
Well, as I mentioned at the top, we're the IEP process people, and it's a cliche, but just as we know that like no two snowflakes are alike, no two kids are alike, and no two manifestations of even the same disability category or label are alike. There's a reason it's called the autism spectrum. So in terms of what I do, day to day, I don't mind sharing with folks. I'm an individual with a disability, and academically speaking, I do not possess an education background. I was a broadcast journalism student in college. So
why are you on that side then of the microphone and not this side? This is weird
for me. This is fun for me.
Okay, because I don't have a clue what I'm doing, Matthew. So feel free to give me pointers.
You're doing fine. But one of the things I do at work, on calls with families is, to some extent, I liken at least the beginning portions of a phone call as me, as if I'm sort of conducting an interview. Because one of the things I learned is that a good interviewer primarily listens rather than asking questions. So I need to get foundational information from the parent. A lot of calls just start with me saying, tell me what's going on. And the deeper I can get into that initial call with the parent, there's really no such thing as a quick call. It's not a race. It's important that we as supporters spend the time, within reason, respective to overall call volume, but spend the time, getting deeper, getting to know through the parent, the person who knows them best, who the kid is and where the difficulties may be originating. So let's say that it's a parent that calls with their child's IEP in front of them. That's a case where I'm probably able to refer more to specific sections of the IEP right off the bat, and I can say, as they talk, I might stop them at some juncture and say, okay, you've talked about these behaviors that the school says they're seeing, and maybe the parent isn't seeing them. Does your child have a behavior intervention plan, for example? And I'll refer to parts specifically in the IEP and ask the parent to sort of, direct me to them so that we can ask pointed questions. And in a case like that, that's probably not a meeting, because we do have a limited capacity to actually participate in meetings in the flesh or virtually. That's probably not a meeting that I'm going to say we can participate in, but it's like me prepping the family on the fly for, their talking points, their priority concerns. Another common question that I get a lot is, I've got a meeting coming up and I want to know what I can ask for my child. So then it probably again starts with, tell me a little bit about your child. But then the simplest answer when a person asks, what can we ask for? you can ask for anything you want. Basically, you just have to be prepared for some of the answers to perhaps be no. So then we work on, again, priority concerns. You know, maybe I introduce some jargon, and I try very hard to explain slowly what I mean by, say, a independent educational evaluation or free appropriate public education, FAPE. You know better than anybody, we live in acronym hell. So
Yes, we do.
I'll tell them that. But any jargon or abbreviation that I use on a call, I try to explain. So meeting prep is a big thing that we do, because we believe first and foremost in parent empowerment, and obviously have restrictions, prohibition on providing legal advice. There's sometimes a line that I have to walk. But then it becomes, sometimes I'll say to the parent, okay, can you give me a list of bulleted concerns, and I'll look those over, and we can refine them that way. Sometimes, depending on the situation, or perhaps if the parent discloses some type of personal deficit, such as a learning disability of their own,
Sure.
I might say, well, I'm going to send you, with your consent, a release of information form, which we use, of course, for official written permission from the parent to see the IEP itself. Then I start by reviewing it individually, and then getting back together with the parent to talk about what I saw, and we prep that way. It takes on any number of sub areas within special ed, from how do I get an IEP to begin with, to one's been done and I don't agree with it, what do I do? Some stories will outline right away a clear dispute between the parties. So that means we're probably talking dispute resolution, like the mediation system, for instance. And I'm sort of, in the back of my mind the whole time, I am, the deeper a conversation gets, I'm listening for criteria that we use, which I'm not going to go into our entire triage, for using scarce resources to determine meeting attendance. But one of the major things we do is when either it would appear an IEP disagreement is about to morph into a mediation, and we think it should. I mean, I'll introduce mediation on quite a few calls, and then we do support actively, as many as we can. Without numbers in front of me, I can't say we have more mediations in an average year than IEP meetings. But in IEP meetings, we try to do most of our work over the phone. So if that means longer preparation calls, IEP reviews, that's what we'll do. Because in all, we have, for the most part, 3 people who do, direct services work as their main task. And then we have other grants and different partnerships that we engage in. So many calls on the parents' end do start with, I'm looking for a parent advocate to attend an IEP meeting. The answer to that is, the disclaimer is, well, I will tell you right away that most we cannot attend in the flesh, but I can prep you. So tell me what's going on, and we'll work from there. And I'm the one who has the task at Facets as parent services coordinator of screening the referrals, making sure that they meet the criteria that we've set forth, and then I refer those typically to our intensive support specialist, whose position is funded precisely to support families in meetings in other areas of the state. For those who don't know, our physical office is based in Milwaukee, but we feel it's very important and helpful to families that we have an intensive support specialist position who can travel to a meeting in Appleton, Racine. If it's a meeting up north, we can still do that. We just have to pay a little bit more attention to finances, and then our person will offer to participate by phone or virtually. So I know I'm rambling on here, but the one thing I would add is that we have learned in the age of COVID. I think we all had significant concerns about how virtual meetings would work for families, but
Yes.
I've taken on a number of them over at least two, if not three different virtual platforms. And they, there's not much difference between them. And generally speaking, they work. So one of the things I know that we're going to help families in preparation with is I personally think schools are going to look in reopening to hold more meetings virtually, and as long as parents mutually agree to that with the school, that is something that they can do. Um, I guess if you want me to sum it up, our job is to help empower parents who know their kid best to prepare for IEP meetings, support them in meetings, but we give them their rights, their options, kind of, reading between the lines, doing some things regarding, okay, you've shared with me that you and the teacher or principal maybe have had some friction in meetings, but have you gone to the special ed or pupil services person with your concerns? So we're all about that collaboration as much as we can be, and support in a non-adversarial way, which is one thing that I think makes us unique.
And I love that about facets, because I think it is unique, and it follows what I try to do as well. In that, if we can get everybody working together towards the same goal, if we can trust each other, we're going to get a lot more accomplished than if we started as an adversarial relationship. If I don't think you have my best interests or the best interests of my child at heart, I'm probably not going to listen to you. And if you don't think that I understand at all about the education system, you're probably not going to listen to me either. And so helping set up the IEP so that it's a lot of listening. Sounds like some of what you do is helping them listen for what's being said, and then what is it you need? How are you going to get your priorities? And I love the fact that you brought up priorities. What is the most important thing for my child this semester or this year in school? Helping
And
them set priorities.
we understand that when someone calls facets, there's a good chance it may not be their first call to an agency, certainly not their initial moment of frustration. So sometimes when I have longer calls, I don't, I really don't pay much attention at all to the minutes. I pay attention to the quality and what's accomplished during a call. Because if I'm on a longer call, it may well be that I'm spending the first, 10, 15 minutes even not really doing anything. Why? Because the parent, by tone or the content of what they're saying, just needs that person to vent some frustrations to a little bit. So if I this is a terrible word, but allow them to do that, then they've sort of done that piece, and then we can get somewhere. And by listening, I try to use that as a tool to help me sort of build up my and our credibility in further support to them, because a lot of times their calls are out of frustration and trust has already been lost between them and
Yes. Yep, I would imagine, much like regional centers, you don't get many phone calls complimenting the system of care, letting you know how great everything is going. It usually is in a time of crisis and in a time of pain. And so that whole listening skill is so important. So besides the fact that parents can call in and go over the IEP and you help them understand what their rights are, do you guys have any other like trainings for parents to learn more about IEPs? How do you offer that to parents?
You just set me up a lot there, Tim.
I tried.
We we do have over 80 different trainings as a part of our 2020 calendar, and we're always striving, and I think succeeding, to expand the diversity of those offerings from year to year. one of the main things that we're in the process, we've rolled these out. They're available for listening for those that have missed, but we have, and we're going to be tweaking them for future improvement and use. But we have put together and launched a 10-part IEP module training series, along with sort of, if you want to think of it as 11 parts, we have a fairly new resource called the IEP checklist that our help desk team put together. All good ideas are sort of worth stealing, and we were inspired
Absolutely.
by a resource that our parent center friends in North Carolina put together. I should have mentioned at the beginning that the reason Facets is able to exist is that the main grant that keeps us going is federally funded from the Department of Education. And every state and U.S. territory has at least one parent center mandated by federal statute there to meet the needs of children with disabilities and their families. So if you're listening to this and you're, say, in Hudson, the difficulty of that is if you need help desk type assistance, or if you want to take a training, anybody can take a training, because the other part of that is it's webinar format. So we don't care where you reside. But if you need help desk type of assistance, you would still call Wisconsin Facets Help Desk. The problem sometimes arises that your area, your physical space, is way outside our travel budget. So if through the help desk process, we determine that you need intensive support, we will give that to you, but it will be virtual. It will be, virtual or by phone. So, but if you live just across the river in Minnesota, or if you have a relative that you need to help, which is a call that we get sometimes, if the person lives in Minnesota, there's a center in Minnesota. Same thing, Illinois, and so on. But the training piece is cool because it's mostly webinar format, so you can log on, with multiple modalities. We record them. Most of the presentations we put on are from 12 to 1. We're trying to hit the typical professional lunch hour. If that's not you, that's why we record them. Anytime you sign on, you will guarantee yourself to get a link to the recording once you, I should say, register, not sign on, but that's how we reach families in remote places and in greater numbers. But the IEP modules are really cool, so check those out. We also try to have, partly because of our staff size, but we try to bring in as many outside experts as we can. So if it's a complex issue like, say, school discipline, we usually try to bring in somebody on the DPI special education team. If we're doing a presentation on how to file a complaint, we want to bring in a complaint investigator to do that. We don't always want to be the presenter. As you know, I shouldn't be doing a healthcare presentation. You should, and graciously have for us. So the value of collaboration comes through in the diversity of our trainings, and we hope that families log on to them, consume them, share them, and they spread that way.
Absolutely. Obviously, I'm a fan of those online trainings. I've presented a couple, and I definitely have referred people to them because knowledge, it's been said that knowledge is power, and nobody is born understanding the special education system, as we all have to learn it. What you do at Facets is fantastic, but I'm sure that you're not the only place parents can go to if they have questions about special education, IEPs. Do you have like some main partners in Wisconsin? Who else? Where else can parents turn to for help if they have questions? I mean, we obviously want them to go to Facets. We're not saying don't go to Facets. Please go to Facets. But where else might they find help in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and obviously I'm not here to plug other organizations or to tell the audience what other organizations do, because that would be irresponsible of me to say exactly what somebody else does and someone calls and turns out to be incorrect.
And I appreciate you not promising that I will answer everybody's questions about healthcare, because I will not.
No, I mean,
So I thank you
but
for that.
but on the healthcare side, I mean, obviously, if it's a direct and personal medical matter, I have used the line, "I'm not a doctor," and the only thing I can even say about anything medical is it's a family decision. That's between you and the doctor, what decision you make. The medical side, where it most comes into my daily work, is me telling people something like, if you're trying to build a case for some disability category or support to be added to the IEP, the medical documentation won't make the difference, but it can't hurt you. So I'm not a doctor, not a lawyer. Which agency or resource depends on what the area of need is. Where Tim works is a good one for the healthcare side, as well as like Family Voices of Wisconsin. I know does a lot of work with that. Special education wise, in our world, the best place to start really is always the local school district, whether that means your child's teacher, or if there's a dispute going up the chain of command, and we can help you navigate through that and even research some information if it's not readily available, or certainly for families without convenient technology access, we can help determine whom the right people to call are. Each school district has family engagement liaisons through a DPI grant known as the Wisconsin Statewide Parent Educator Initiative. They work a little differently because they will tell you up front that they are neutral when they get involved. Their job is to kind of broker common ground between families and schools and districts. And that's what we believe in also. It's just that when we have a phone call or when I show up to a meeting, I am there to support the family. Disability Rights Wisconsin is a place that's protection and advocacy, mandated agency in the state of Wisconsin. They are an advocacy organization that has focused on a few priority issues related to special education. Their teams are all supervised by attorneys. So there are certain types of meetings that Wisconsin Facets is not able to attend, such as a manifestation hearing, which is what happens perhaps right before a child could be kicked out of school. So in a situation like that, I can only give the particulars of what the parameters are, the general information about how it works, and some general, for lack of a better word, advice what to do, but I can't support it as an active participant. So I might say, if you're looking for additional support after this conversation, call your, the local disability rights office, which at this point they have offices here in Milwaukee and in Madison, Rice Lake, and they've added Neenah is the fourth. So we all work a little differently, but I want to say this. The work that we do, if we're doing it right, should be done in collaboration with one another. And we say we sort of have, less than formal agreements that we're not going to duplicate resources. Like, for example, if a parent mentions to me that they had contacted disability rights and their advocate is going to come to the meeting with the parent, I have to say, well, I can talk to you today. It's your choice with whom to work moving forward, but we cannot duplicate service. Because it's not about, we do that because we don't want to step on anyone's toes, and certainly the legal line that we can't cross is very important, not only for our sake, but for the sake of parent and students. But if we're doing our job correctly, like it's never my goal to say, no, you don't want DRW, you want Facets to come with you.
Right.
And I would hope that the same tactic is reciprocated going the other way.
I'm sure it is. That's one of the things that the more people that I talk to that are out there trying to help parents, the more they're interested in finding the right help for parents. And so it's not a lot of turf battle. It's what does this family need and who is best situated to serve them and to help them get what they need. Which is why we are so thankful that Facets is in Wisconsin. Because when we have parents calling about, they're struggling with their IEPs, it's one of the first resources that we refer them to is calling Wisconsin Facets. So we're glad you're there. I am out of questions for today. Do you have any final words that you might want to say to any of the families about IEPs, special education? Any final words of wisdom, golden nuggets, silver linings? Let's see how many other metaphors I can come up with. No, I think that's about it. Anything you'd like to say?
Speaking directly to families, I say often that no matter the amount of work that we do at Facets or any other agency person, no matter the amount of work, years of expertise that we have, you as a parent, family member are the expert on your child. There's a reason that within the IEP process, the parent is a required team member and we are not. So one of the reasons that we think it's so important to sort of emphasize that we're not decision makers in a meeting or any other setting is we want to avoid, good or bad, the scenario in a meeting where the parent looks at me and goes, do you agree with that? And that does happen. But so I've had to sort of train myself because I definitely have a view on what's right and what isn't based on what we're hearing. But I've trained myself over the years to say, it doesn't matter what I think, it's your show. And then, so you are the expert on your child. I should mention, by way of another organization, if you just want a sort of a sounding board mentor and that person to be another parent whose life experience matches your own, Parent to Parent of Wisconsin is another great one. And I know you're very familiar with them.
No, that's a great comment. I totally did not bring them up in the conversation, which I am neglectful of. Because you're right, because one of the questions that I know that we do get is, okay, well, I know that Facets can't come with me to the meeting, but can I have somebody else come with me to an IEP meeting? Can I have a friend or a relative there as well? Do you ever get that question?
Yeah, and we get meetings where that's the case. And I guess I at least look at it a little differently. Like, you have the right to have anyone you want. From a professional sense, we usually complete that thought with expertise or who's invested in the child's success. But if it's simply moral support because, and I can do a little bit of that. Like, I've brought tissues into what I thought were going to be difficult meetings for the parent before. But if you simply want moral support, if you've got the sister, the grandma, whomever, friend, I won't say I had clergy in an IEP meeting, but you could have that too. Another thing I think is, and I don't talk to a lot of dads, I think for fairly logical reasons, but one thing that I find helpful where at all possible is if it is a situation with two, married and active parents in particular, that two parents can attend the IEP meeting because they know how to balance each other's strengths and weaknesses better than I ever could. So I encourage moms and dads alike to be involved in a meeting process.
I think that is such a fantastic point, and we could go on for another hour, at least talking about the importance of that parental support and that both parents, if possible, being involved for a number of reasons in that IEP meeting and in the kids' education. But we don't have another hour. So we're going to leave on that fantastic note of encouragement. And Matthew, I just want to thank you again, and thank you for the work that Facets is doing. Thanks so much for being here, and hope everybody listening enjoys, and let us know if there's any way else we can help. We'll have the link to Wisconsin Facets as well as the regional centers will be available on the YouTube page. So thanks again, Matthew. Have a great afternoon.
You're welcome. You too.